Welcome to 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. Empowering women like you to amplify your voice, your message, your movement. We believe that if 10,000 new women stepped into high-level leadership platforms, we can transform the industries across the planet. 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. And now your host, Narissa Street.
Hello, I'm so excited that you came back. You came back to listen to the podcast. And I am delighted that you came back to listen to the podcast. So as you know, I am Narissa Street. You heard that already. But you didn't come here for me. You came here for Julia. So I'm really excited to introduce to you this dynamic woman that I just had just the pleasure of working with and engaging with in this amazing cohort. So after hearing her story and connecting with her, I knew I had to bring her to you. So please, I'm excited to bring to you today, Julia Lucidi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on the podcast. So let's get started. I know who you are, but they don't. So who are you?
My name is Julia Lucidi. I'm originally from Brazil, and I have been raised across multiple countries, mainly between the United States, Brazil, and Mexico City. So my heart is composed of many cultures, and it has shaped who I am today.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. So how did that journey begin? So started in Brazil, and then you said varied cultures. So I guess that was a family journey?
Yeah, to a certain extent, it was a family journey, and then it became my own at a certain age. And I was born in Brazil, to be more specific. And when my dad always dreamed of living in the United States, he accepted a position when I was just a baby. I was 6 months old when we left Brazil for Atlanta, Georgia. And I lived in Atlanta for 7 years. And then when I was 7, my father accepted a position in Mexico City, which then meant from the age of 7 to 12, I practically became a little Mexican girl. And such a moldable age, impossible not to assimilate that. Mm-hmm. And when I was 12, we moved back to the United States, where I stayed until I was 23. And this is where the journey kind of forks, because I decided to move again, but this time not with my family, by myself. In search of connecting back with my own roots and with who I am, I moved to Brazil and lived there for 6 years, working, found my husband there, moved back to the States 4 years ago, and I'm happy to be in Miami.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think, the thought that the journey of you moving first with your family and then with a desire to reconnect to who you felt you are as a Brazilian, and then going back there. And then, of course, that not being the only thing of note, but then finding the partner where your heart led you. So interesting. And then coming back here and settling here. So I think something to be said about allowing yourself to separate from, your family, but really be driven by something that is inside you that says, hey, let's go figure out who we are.
Yeah, I've joked around, maybe a little bit serious, but kind of joked around saying, I think I have a nomad gene. Because every couple of years I start feeling like I have to move. And I don't know if it's because I've moved so much throughout my life. And it just, every couple of 5-6 years, I start feeling like some really big change needs to happen. Sure. And my choice at the time was to move countries, which I did twice as an adult, right? So.
Yeah. And that's big, and I think people, I feel like moving, but not just moving, but moving to a completely different culture, even though it is your
You're right.
native culture, still driving to that space, or being driven to that space is something to be said about what's going on inside you.
Look, I think you just made a really important point that a lot of people don't realize.
Sure.
Yes, I was raised with 2 Brazilian parents. Yes, I was raised in Brazil. Yes, I had Brazilian music in my household. We ate Brazilian food. I was only allowed to speak Portuguese to my mom.
Wow.
But when you move to a country, it is so much more than the 4 walls of what you experience in your home. And it is hard. It's really hard to move countries. Even moving back to the United States was hard. I will tell you, it was the easiest adaptation because culturally I identify very strongly with Miami because it's so hybrid by nature, Latino, American. It's just I've never felt so at home. But moving is uprooting, and the roots break when you uproot a plant. So there is a certain amount of suffering that comes with that. And you really have to have a clear vision of what brought you there to keep you moving forward. And when I moved to Brazil, I was 23 years old. I went through 10 months of depression as soon as I got to Brazil. I had no idea I was depressed. I didn't even know what was going on, right? And I knew that God had opened the doors for me to go to Brazil, and I just hung on to that. And it just brought me through. And after I overcame the depression and continued growing, I was so thankful that in those first couple of months that I had moved to Brazil, where I was so ready to pack my bags and go back, I'm so glad I persisted and stayed. My faith was an anchor to that personally. And the experiences that I had because I was persistent through difficulty allowed for me to have incredible fruits in my life. You know, I had an incredible experience in my career in Brazil, and I met my husband, my partner in Brazil. And so I think there's something to be said about persisting through difficulty and not backing out.
Wow. That's really deep, because I think people, and especially people who are used to knowing the answers, right? Knowing that you were sent there for a reason, but then still having, as you said, the depression, and not even knowing that it was depression, just knowing that there was this malaise, this melancholy, but also at the same time knowing you're supposed to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's deep, and I think as you said, having a strong faith that there was a reason that you were brought there and the doors were opened for you is deep. So I think, some of the things that we can take away definitely have to be around having a strong vision.
100%. You need to know what you want. There's that quote that says, there's no wind strong enough for a sailboat that doesn't know where it's going.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Yeah. So beautiful that you were able to then, as you said, and again, go to the space where you were from, right? And that you had roots there, even though you had to uproot yourself and then go be rooted, right? That you were then able to have, as you said, the fruits of your career. So tell us a little bit about those fruits. What were you able to discover for yourself in Brazil? And what are those fruits that are still bearing now?
Yeah. So I studied public relations and marketing at Kennesaw State University in Kennesaw, Georgia. And I worked for a financial advising family-owned company, not my family, but it was a family-owned business that I worked in. And they gave me a lot of space to be able to think outside the box. I ran new projects, helped them with just optimizing their processes. It was really, really great. And I just had this burning desire of going to Brazil. So I actually moved to Brazil. I had been at that job for probably like 2 years. I interned and also worked full time for them. And when I went to Brazil, I just started scouting out different organizations. I didn't understand the business environment very well. I was literally like throwing darts with my like eyes, covered. But I was like, whatever, I want any job in Brazil, And so luckily I came across this nonprofit organization called Endeavor Brazil, and Endeavor is present all throughout the world and the US as well. And I worked for Endeavor for 3 years, working with entrepreneurial culture, and really had to rub a lot of shoulders with really inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders throughout the Brazilian business world. And my role was to be able to make their stories well known so that more people could be inspired by their example and kind of shift the perspective of how entrepreneurship was seen in Brazil. Because for many years, different from the US culture, entrepreneurship in Brazil was seen as something someone either does by extreme necessity. So I'm going to sell water bottles on the street so that I can feed my children. Or it was an executive that was going to steal money and he wanted to have a business. Wow. So these were the two personas that were identified in Brazilian culture as far as entrepreneurship. And understanding the importance of entrepreneurship to develop an economy, we stepped in to be able to highlight the positive effects of entrepreneurship and positive role models. And today we see in Brazil, 50% of venture capital deals in 2019 were in Brazilian companies. There's unicorns sprouting left and right from Brazil. It's definitely awesome. A significant leader in Latin America. And that is definitely a fruit of not only my job, of my work at Endeavor, but all the other people who also came before and after me.
You could pat your back. You could pat yourself on the back there. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, but you had something to do with it.
Hey, this is a great episode, right? Want to carry the insight from our show wherever you go? Visit myjoyisvaluable.com for the best resources that we've gathered that are inspired by expert guests. Find support for your business, tools to organize your life, and more. That's myjoyisvaluable.com.
No, absolutely. I work my butt off.
Yeah.
I work very late nights and very early mornings. And it really just made me completely fall in love with entrepreneurship. I love to say that if you have a job or if you are an entrepreneur, you can thank an entrepreneur because they're either hiring you or they're inspiring you. So for me, entrepreneurs are the leaders of our economy. They help people accomplish their own goals and dreams. And it is, to me, the biggest honor and excitement. It's just awesome to work with entrepreneurs. They're dreamers. I love supporting them. I love working alongside them. They inspire me to reach further. And everywhere I've gone after Endeavor, I've always carried entrepreneurship with me. It's become my area of expertise. So after Endeavor, I worked for the city of Rio. After that, I went to the Coca-Cola company in Brazil. And then listen to this. When I wanted to come back to the US, the company that hired me was the company I interned for when I was in college.
Yeah.
So look at the importance of caring and establishing healthy business relationships, regardless of what comes in your way. You can have a good relationship, a bad relationship. You need to always leave doors open. And because those doors were left open, because I left on good terms, because I left doing a good job, when I was ready to come back to the States, I worked for them for 2 years.
Wow.
And so after that was when I started to want to plug in with the entrepreneurial ecosystem again. And I found CIC Miami, which is where I work now.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. There's the story is fantastic. So first of all, I think it's really important that you do, Pat, definitely and specifically and explicitly pat yourself on the back for Brazil, because I think a lot of times women don't understand the impact. You were in an organization, but the organization was smart enough to hire you, right? And to keep you, right? So for them to have this vision, but they also had to have the person who could execute it. So yeah, you get to own Brazil's unicornness. So thank you very much for your.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because we do hear a lot. I keep my ear to the tech world, and I do hear a lot about Brazil, and it has been recently. So that's fantastic. And it was your heart that brought you there, which I think is another thing that entrepreneurs need to be very clear about, that their hearts can lead them to business success. So that's fantastic. So again, another amazing point of your journey is no burn bridges. There's a lot of times that we can see the vision of where we're going, but we're still on the bridge. And for those of us who are very passionate and excited about getting where we're going, we just need to be reminded not to burn the bridge while we're still on it, right? And then you don't have to burn the bridge.
Don't ever. That's my left. Don't ever, because this world is so tiny. It's so small, and we need each other more than we know right now. Yeah. Oh, say that one more time. We need each other more than we even know right now. Yeah. And if we haven't been, if that hasn't slapped us in the face 5 or 6 times recently, then that's brilliant. So, I'm excited to hear about the work that you're doing, and you've answered a few of the questions that I had. One of them is, what are you passionate about? And you've said it, you're really excited about the entrepreneurial ecosystem and how entrepreneurship really is what builds the economy. Am I hearing that right? Yeah, absolutely. It's what generates jobs, right? And really the motivation of a free market and being able to make more money that's taps into the driving force of entrepreneurship. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to grow, we want to be successful, we want to be able to, either buy nice things or provide for our family or give, contribute. A lot of things can be accomplished. I don't think that money is everything, but it is kind of the lifeline of a company. You know what I mean? There's no way to deny that. And it's what allows for companies to grow and to hire more people and have an impact on a growing economy. And entrepreneurs are leading those conversations. So within those conversations that we're having, right, about and because what I've learned from entrepreneurship is that the definition of an entrepreneur is a problem solver, right? So what are we as entrepreneurs needing to do to continue to position ourselves as problem solvers? Because I think what tends to lead the conversation is the money. Like we can, you can go and you could be a unicorn, or you can make millions of dollars. But what keeps us in the economy is that we continue to solve a problem. So how do we lead the conversation in that? So a lot of times, if not always, entrepreneurs are very lonely people, because entrepreneurs, they have a big dream, and usually their family members think they're crazy, think they're wasting their time, and they just have to hang on to that vision like it's all they've got, give it their all, and blood, sweat, and tears, and all of their money going into this company and this idea that they're passionate about. And it's hard to go alone. It's hard. It's very taxing. So what I believe best helps entrepreneurs is to be a part of a community. Being a part of a community of entrepreneurs, you're around other crazy people. You're around other people who are dreaming up some amazing solutions, who are coming across the same problems you're having in your company, or that are there in a serendipitous moment to be a leaning shoulder, right? And so having community is so fundamental. And I see it as entrepreneurs come into CIC and they find a connection here and they are able to work from our space and able to connect with other entrepreneurs. They feel empowered. They feel seen. They really have their hope restored in this space, which is the type of environment that I believe entrepreneurs need.
So, yeah. So the community, is really where, and I think that's, as you're talking about, isolation has been, I've been doing so much reading about establishing communities because I'm running a platform and of a community of podcasters, right? And so it is an isolating when you have that vision and no one else around you sees it, it is isolating. So establishing the community is amazing, an amazing way to approach things. So how do we become, as we establish the community, we still have a vision on our own, right? So even if I am in an entrepreneur and I'm in a community of other entrepreneurs, I still have a vision that's separate from them in some way, shape, or form, because that's what defines my business. How do I become a good community member?
Well, that's a great question. I think a good community member is present. I like to say, there's a saying that we say a lot in Brazil, and sometimes I like to translate these over. I never know if it's going to work 100%, sure. But it's who isn't seen isn't remembered. Who is seen is remembered. Ooh. Right? So it's kind of like...
say it in Portuguese or is that a lot?
Yeah. Quem é visto é lembrado. Who is seen is remembered. So if people see you, they remember you. And so being present and showing up, even if your commitment is to be at your community, be at CIC, or I don't know, maybe you have another local community that you're connected to, right? Committing. I think commitment is a really important word that freaks a lot of people out. But really, it's when we commit that we reap the biggest fruits of any relationship. So committing to an innovation community can just mean showing up 3 times a week to work from your innovation space. Of course, we're in the middle of COVID. Let's please recognize that. As I'm saying the words, I can hear people being like, what is she talking about? We're all working from home. But
showing up for, there's classes and things like that, but showing up for those things.
So people actually are coming to the physical space where everybody wears masks. I'm in a private office, but we all wear masks when we're around the space. Yeah. But like you said, there's online gatherings as well. There's many ways that you can plug in whichever way feels best for you at this moment. And as things come back to normal and we're living a life, post vaccines and we're all, safe to roam, we can be united again in physical spaces as well. But I don't think it requires a physical space to do that. In order for you to be connected with community, you can be scanning your community's network and doing coffee dates 3 times a week, 30 minutes, and getting to know people. So that's one way that you can really show up.
Yeah, and I think it's a habit to be isolated, right? And so especially because you're used to coming from, as you talked about, family, you're used to coming from a group of people who are like, you're crazy, go off somewhere. So you're used to the isolation. So having to come out of default and design engagement, I think maybe is maybe a practice that we can develop. So this is good. And I think it also benefits us as entrepreneurs, because then, as you're saying, the connecting one to another, there's freshness, there's fresh ideas, there's more inspiration, there's more hope. So what I'm noticing, right, in the position that you're in, and I think really in the positions that you've been in with all of these organizations, even though you yourself have had a position in an organization, you've helped those of us who are starting organizations and companies of our own. So I want you to talk about, for people who want to be in an organization, who don't want to be entrepreneurs, can you talk about tips for people who want to be within an organization and want to be of an impact? How have you managed that? Because you've been, every position that you've been in, you've been able to be someone of impact. So talk about it.
That's such a good question, because I think it can be quite glamorized, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people can be like, I want to work for a startup, or I want to work for a multinational, or they dream up of what they want out of their profession. And sometimes they find themselves in a company with perhaps a smaller name, or not the culture that they wanted, or the perks that they expected. And I would just say that, of course, do your best to interview, to network. Networking is super important. But when you do find that place where it is that you're going to settle, understand that the career is a life journey, and there's no reason to try and make wherever you are perfect. No place is going to be perfect, but you need to trust the journey. Because now that I look back and see all the places where I've worked, I feel so tremendously thankful. Though at times I've had moments where I was discontent, frustrated, confused, like, what brought me here? Why am I in this place? Like, how does this even make sense? And now where I am in my journey, in my career, I'm able to look back and say, wow, like, look at what I accomplished in XYZ place. And look how that built me up to be the professional I am today. So I think just seeing the good and the opportunity in everything, and not putting limits because it doesn't reach, this ideal that we've created in our head.
Wow.
Want to hear more fantastic shows like this one? Visit blackwomenpodcasting.com, the only podcast directory and platform exclusively featuring the voices of Black women across the globe. Listen to experts in business, relationships, spirituality, culture, and more. blackwomenpodcasting.com.
That's really key, because I think, as you say, sometimes you land someplace and you want it to be perfect, or you feel like it's your job to make it perfect. And that can be overwhelming, so being able to find just the space for yourself, and just,
I think at the end of the day, that just means put your head down, do a good job, work hard, see where there's opportunity to do something better and make it better. You know what I mean? Develop your skills, start presenting in public. If you have an opportunity to do a media interview, do some media training, do a media interview. You know what I mean? I used to have a sticker on my desk when I moved to Brazil. And because working in a new culture is mind-blowing, it's so challenging. And it said, the sticker said, do one thing that scares you every day.
Wow.
And I can't tell you how many times that Post-it got me off my chair doing things.
I like that. Do one thing that scares you every day. So you touched on something, and I'm going to go back to it. Working in a new culture is challenging. What's one piece of advice that you wish someone had gifted you with that?
Well, I think it's a complex question to answer, to be quite frank.
Okay.
Because it's like, what culture are you going to? So maybe I'll tell you specifically to Brazil.
Okay.
I wish people would have told me how relational partnership building is in Brazil, because as soon as I got there, my boss had me reach out to a partner, and I was to ask him for a favor. And I sent an email, I copied her, and I asked him for the favor.
Okay.
And she pulled me aside and she said, like, are you crazy? Like, what are you thinking? Like, go like schedule coffee, introduce yourself, get to know them. And then in a couple of weeks or months, you can ask them for a favor. And it's so different from how we do business here in the States. Here, where if you want to do coffee, and then like, I'm not even going to book time with you. If that's like, if you want to have several conversations, if it's just, hey, I want to book coffee just to introduce what I do, like being super clear, we do that. But it's not super common practice. It's more, hey, what is the clear exchange in this relationship, right? And so it was just a funny occurrence that taught me a lot. And perhaps I could have had that tip a little earlier.
And I then what I'm hearing is whatever culture you're stepping into, you need to do the research on the cultural norms, because I know that in the Caribbean, that is absolutely a norm. You're not just going to go approach a business and say, I want to sell you something. There's a massaging, there's people leaning in. And so who is your family? Like, that's very much, specifically in the Caribbean, that's very much who's your family before I book time with you. Well, who's your grandmother and who's the person, who's your aunt? and so it is a very much like, we need to know who your people are before we move any further.
That's such a difficult thing to have translated. Like, they don't have a book on cultural norms on how to do business, Maybe they do, but I mean, there's just so many things that are unsaid.
True. And so I think that's the other thing as well with the stepping into a new culture we have to create space and time to understand what's unsaid. So that's probably part of the, when you're the transitional moments, the space of feeling so alone and lost because you have a whole cultural norm that you're stepping into, and it's completely different than your own. And there are frustrations that are coming up, and you don't even as a smart person, we like to solve our frustrations, but you don't even know where to turn.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And perhaps when stepping into a new culture, not jumping to assumptions too quickly. If possible, don't at all, or don't entertain your assumptions because they're probably wrong. Your assumptions are probably wrong because every cultural code around you is what you are not used to.
Interesting. So speaking of codes, watch the segue.
I'm waiting for it.
Speaking of codes. So what's it like being a woman in technology? Because your current space is very technology driven, and there's lots of conversation about what that means. So I'm speaking to a specific woman, and I know your experience is your own. But what's it like being a woman at a high level in a technology organization?
So I actually work with like 9 other women here. We have one guy on the team. And so I remember when I first arrived at the company, I was like, wow, this is a lot of women. What is this going to be like? I'm so used to working like 50-50. You know what I mean? And honestly, it's been such a great environment and space for us to just support each other. It's really just become a really, just a strong structure of support. I mean, I don't know what other words to put it into, but I think we understand each other's struggles in a way that a man doesn't. You know what I mean? A man can notice things externally, but there's a certain amount of transparency that is very fluid and welcome here. That I greatly, greatly appreciate. And it has allowed for us to just grow stronger, grow more professionally, propel each other towards that growth. So I would say I'm in a very privileged spot. I do think that that just in general, being a woman in tech, there's just some, sexism, things that we deal with inside tech and outside tech is going to be everywhere, But I have found that just having, great allies who you work with, get your team members, partners that have, you've developed strong relationship with professionally, and just working hard and kind of not giving too much attention to those things. I don't like to focus on negative things. You know what I mean? So if I notice that there's some sort of sexism or bad vibes or whatever, I just kind of deflect it and I focus on the good. You know what I mean? So whatever you focus on grows. So I'm conscientious of my role. I'm conscientious of the fact that I'm a woman, growing professionally and the different spaces I step into. And I honestly just try to show up as mature and having fun, but serious at the same time. Being professional is what I'm trying to say. To really, I think we're all continuing to lead the way for each other. You know what I mean? I think about professional women who I've worked with who are further along their careers than me. And it's incredible how I remember them in my day-to-day, like incredible women who I don't think about men. I don't think about men I've worked with, but I do remember the powerful women I've worked with. And those, it's almost like I carry their shadow with me.
Wow.
And day-to-day decisions at times, I remember how they would handle something. I remember how they would position themselves, and it propels me.
That's fantastic. And it's great that you're able to be in a space where you feel so supported. And I do acknowledge that, it may have something to do with the makeup there, but I feel like it also has something to do with your makeup there. And as you're saying, you have a certain mindset. So let's talk a little bit about mindset, and then we'll wrap up. So what advice do you wish you hadn't taken? So, they give us a lot of advice in our careers and moving forward, and especially with everything, going on with us. So what advice do you wish that you hadn't taken?
That's a fabulous question that I've never been asked. And advice. Honestly, I'm trying to think really hard here of some bad advice that somebody might have given me. I can't think of one so clearly right now. I mean, honestly, I'll be really frank. The first thing that popped up into my head was when I was in middle school and I wanted to try out for the soccer team. And I told this girl, and she told me, "Don't do it. You're going to be bad at it." And I didn't try out. And I think that's honestly, that is like what came to my mind when you said that. And I remember, because I didn't actually get into being really athletic until I was older. I started writing courses when I was 8, and I rode on and off until I was 20. And then when my horse passed, I started training martial arts, and I've been training Brazilian capoeira. It's a Afro-Brazilian martial art named capoeira. For 13 years. I'm an instructor in capoeira. I compose music for capoeira. And so, at times I would think like, man, when I was 12 years old, I could have been doing sports. I have such a strong inclination towards it. Like now as an adult, I see it, and I always thought to myself, man, I wish I wouldn't have taken that advice, because I probably could have gotten more in tune with my body a lot earlier in life. But that happened much later athletically for me.
That's fantastic, because I think we think adult, but to acknowledge that as a child, that sometimes we lead each other astray, but also that that now it's such a big part of your life is really interesting. But I think we do that a lot to each other. You know, it's our own fears that we pass on to each other. And yeah, that's interesting. I am obsessed with capoeira, by the way. So so that's amazing. So thinking along those lines, then, what have you failed at?
Well, when I was working at Endeavor, I almost got fired.
Oh, okay.
So remember that I told you when I moved to Brazil, I was in depression for 10 months, right? I moved and I started my job like 4 days after I moved. It was like super fast. And what happened was I was depressed. I wanted to leave the country and I was doing my job. I was getting everything done. But it sparked a conversation with my boss and the director of Endeavor Brazil. He had flown from the capital to Rio to have this meeting and probably some other meetings. And they asked me, you know, how have you been doing these past, I don't know how long it had been, 6 to 7 months. And I had all my bullets of the things I had gotten done. And they were like, no, like we see that you're accomplishing everything, but we're concerned about where your heart is in this. Are you present? Do you want to be here? Do you not want to be here? If you do want to be here, great. You can stay. Let's see what needs to be changed up. But if you don't want to be here, then we can help you move to another company where you'll be happy. And I asked them for 2 weeks. And over this 2 weeks, I took some time to pray. I meditated a lot over the matter at hand. And I remember I had a conversation with my boss. Her and I were very, very friendly at that time. We're now friends. But at the time, she was my boss, and we were still getting to know each other as friends. And we had coffee together, and I had told her, she's actually also a lot like me. She's Brazilian, raised in the States. And I had told her, like, isn't it difficult to be here? Like, how do you manage being here? Like, as somebody who's like American Brazilian. And she challenged me with a question. And she said to me, I want you to imagine that you have a flight back to the United States tomorrow, and that you're going to get on that flight. And never again are you going to see the Sugarloaf Mountain, the Christ up on the hill, the beach of Copacabana in Ipanema, and that you're really going back to the States. Would you feel like, man, I got it done, mission accomplished? Or would you have a tiny little feeling like you left some unfinished business in Brazil? When she said that to me, I already knew the answer.
Wow.
I already knew I had to stay. So in my faith, I prayed to God and I said, God, if this is what you have for me, bring it into my heart, because I can't take this anymore. And so I started to imagine what she was telling me, what she had told me to reflect on. And it all went from gray to gold. It was, I started to feel a desperation to stay. I started to feel like I almost let slip the most important thing in my life in that moment. And the 2 weeks weren't even up yet, but my energy for my job changed from night to day. And several directors reached out to me saying, like, you're doing an amazing job. Like, I don't know what changed, but keep it up, blah, blah, blah. And I remember my boss at the time, she emailed me and said, like, well, the 2 weeks aren't up, but by your performance, I have an inclination that I think you're going to stay. And I ended up staying. I stayed for another 2 years and had an incredible growth. And I feel very fortunate to have failed in a place like that.
Yeah. And fortunate to have failed, as you said, in a place like that with those people who saw you, because that's the thing. It's this thing where they could have just said, look, it's not working out. We're going to go ahead and release you. But for them to say a few things, it's safe for you to let us know what's really going on, and we will help you go get what you actually want. That definitely is a divine intervention. And for you to then have somebody supportive to say, take 2 weeks. And
go ahead. Any other organization do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that speaks a lot. That tells me a lot why Endeavor is a global organization, because that means they see their people. Yeah. You know, people always grow an organization. Wow. And so my question was going to be, what has been your best mistake? It sounds like that might have been it.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So, I am so grateful for the time that you've spent with us, because, what I'm getting from you is, first of all, just a strong vision as to who and what you are, and then that person contributing to the growth of, I'm sure, thousands of entrepreneurs across the globe now. We are grateful for you. I'm grateful for you, because you've definitely contributed to me as an entrepreneur with this cohort that you've organized and are leading. So we're looking forward to Black Women Podcasting being a success story.
Absolutely. And congratulations on what you're doing. This podcast is really a remarkable project. And I just wish you from here to the moon full success.
Thank you. So if someone wanted to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
They can email me at my personal email, julialucidi4@gmail.com. Be happy to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for tuning in to 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Find us at 10,000women10,000stages.com.